Welcome back. With a mission to train NYC residents in urban agriculture, Farm School NYC builds self-reliant communities and inspires positive local action around food sovereignty and social, economic, and racial justice. The communications lead for the Farm School, Jazz Kerr, joins me to discuss how this effort paves the way for equitable access to fresh, locally grown food for New Yorkers. Jazz, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, can you tell us a little bit more about the overall mission of the Farm School?
Well, like you said, train, build, and inspire. Our hope is to train New York City residents. The focus on New York is important because we want to make sure that the training comes from here. We also want to build self-reliant communities and continue to inspire positive action around social and racial and economic justice.
And we'll definitely talk a little bit more about, the social and racial economic justice, because I think that's very important. I want to talk a little bit more about BIPOC farmers. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and why, there's this concentrated effort to highlight these farmers?
That is actually integral to our story, our origin story. We were started by a group of self-proclaimed farmy women, farmy ladies. These women were taking their agriculture training in California and then coming back to try and apply those teachings to New York City. It was interesting because they realized, none of the farmers here look like us, and this is not even our climate. So let's build something for us, by us, with community growers who've been doing this for decades.
That's amazing. Now, can you explain the importance of training New Yorkers, just about agriculture, urban agriculture?
For sure. So urban agriculture is important and specific. I think that right now there are a lot of narratives around how it's trendy or new, but those are actually really harmful narratives because Black, Indigenous, and people of color have been growing in the city for decades. This is a way to support our access to fresh food and to support our community building efforts. So we're trying to combat that erasure by highlighting urban ag and the ways that it's been led for years, and by highlighting BIPOC growers, because those are the people who've been leading this movement also.
And I want to talk a little bit more about the history, because you said that, you talked about erasure, and how, unfortunately, we're not seeing a lot of BIPOC farmers, but it has been something in a lot of Indigenous, Black communities for decades. Can you talk a little bit more about the history of that?
Yes, I think that stewardship and environmental efforts have been led by our communities for the longest. And when we're talking about urban agriculture as something that's just to increase the quantity of food, because there's, vertical growing and hydroponics, those are all very great and valuable systems. But the people who have been in the ground working really hard to try and build the soil back and build community haven't been only focused on the quantity, but also on the quality of the soil, on the quality of the food produced, making it culturally accessible and relevant. There are lots of ways to measure the impacts of a community garden that go beyond just how much food is produced or how many people are served, and that includes safety. There's so many measures that we're not often thinking about, that we're trying to speak with the USDA right now to encourage them to think about data in creative ways. We're also working with the USDA because there has been a history of discrimination there, and that's how a lot of people lost their land. We're trying to figure out ways to have representatives from our community to do this work and represent urban agriculture. There's lots of pushes around how do we fund, how do we support, and how do we understand urban ag better, and we're trying to lead that movement as well.
Now, how can urban farming aid in community healing, liberation, and addressing land justice?
I think a lot of it I just touched on, but I think one more thing I'll add is there are lots of people who want to show up for the community better and who are trying to understand where are spaces that I can do this. There's a loss of third spaces, there's a loss of places where people can go for free and just be in community. And I think community gardens are one of those main spaces where you can come together and do an activity, and it's very intergenerational, right? You have youth, you have elders, and everyone has added value to this space. And so we've seen people understand better what it means to be a New Yorker, what it means to be in community, and what it means to show up for one another.
Now, I want to touch on the fact that, in our city, since the pandemic, we've been talking a lot about food insecurity. It's something that we touch on the show quite often. Can you just talk about ways maybe the program just either addresses it or acknowledges it, or even if you don't, what are some ways that this program can help people combat issues of food insecurity?
While we don't have a farm ourselves, we work on many community gardens across the city. So we're trying to bring people the knowledge and the tools that they need to grow this food. And sometimes people come in through, like you said, the pandemic was a hard time for a lot of folks. People come in through different lenses and with different goals. So some people come in with like, my health has been rough and I really want to learn how to heal. And I think that I need to return to the land and return to growing to do that. Like people come seeking connections to their homeland or to the foods that they had in their homelands. So I think that it's a really healing process for folks because they understand that this is a way to really just build that. I think also the aspect that I want to focus on is less about accessing food and like food insecurity, but more about having a say over what you're growing in your community and having a say over how your food is getting to your plate. So there's a lot of fractures within the food system right now, and we're trying to take apart those fractures and build a better food system where everyone along the way has dignity and you feel good about everything that's reaching your plate.
Now, what are some of the topics or just lessons participants in the farm school learn about urban agriculture or farming?
We teach a lot, and all of it has the common thread of justice. So we start with training of trainers, where you learn how to impart this knowledge that you're given onto others. We practice everything we teach with a popular education model. So the popular education model means that there's no one in the classroom who's an empty vessel. At any point, you have something to offer to the educational experience. And so it's not just like a lecture style where somebody's telling you everything. It's collaborative and exploratory learning. And we also teach food justice foundations, where you understand the history of growers and the battles fought for land by community gardeners from different mayors. And we teach around learning the land, like I said, just getting more familiar with who stewarded this land before us. Even botany, but I think what I meant when I said that we focus on justice is like, while we do teach irrigation, before you ever touch an irrigation system, you learn about indigenous water rights and the struggles that they fought as well.
Oh, that's amazing. And I'm hearing so many terms, and I'm like, maybe I should take some of these classes, because I think it's so interesting, coming from New York. There's unfortunately, so much about nature and farming that we, if you grew up in the city your whole life, that you don't really know about. Before I talk a little bit more about that experience, can you tell me a little bit more about the different programs that are offered?
Sure. We have two programs. Our main program is a cohort-based program that usually lasts a year. That program is actually under revision, where we're doing a revision of the program structure and the curriculum. So that one's under wraps right now. But we also have public programs all year. Our next public program is actually going to be beekeeping, and I'll be teaching that. So please sign up if you care about the bees.
Can you quickly tell us a little bit more about the beekeeping?
Yes, we're going to be focusing on native bees. We're going to be talking about the ways that different cultures have stewarded bees for years, and the ways that you can support pollinator habitats across New York City. So like you said, we often don't have as much access to green space, and that's intentional, right? That's due to redlining and lots of other things that our communities face. But we're trying to right that and create access to understanding how you can be a part of your ecosystem and continue to support it.
Yeah, so I definitely like touching on that. So many people from New York, I can't even remember the last time I maybe touched a plant, because I'm just so used to just silver, metal, concrete. That's just a huge part of our city. With that in mind, how can New Yorkers use what they learned, to kind of cultivate, their communities and just bring what they learned back into their neighborhoods and into their homes?
Yeah, the main thing about training of trainers is to try and allow you to take that education beyond yourself. So I think education is often thought of as something that you store or use, but we're thinking of it as something that you share and exchange. And so hopefully after taking our courses, you feel empowered to go back into your community and use what you've learned to improve it. So that can look like joining your community garden, that can look like starting a farmer's market, or even starting a farm upstate where you donate the produce back to the city. So we've done all of these, our students have done all of these things, and we're super proud and we're excited to see what else they dream of and the ways that they want to support and build out their communities.
And with that being said, you sound like you have some amazing students. Who is eligible to join this program? And maybe what are some of the requirements to join?
We ask that students are 18 plus. It would be great if you had some interest in joining your local community garden or just some plans around what you want to grow afterward. So you don't have to have a business plan by any means, but a lot of folks come in like, I just want to build a better community of folks who know how to care for the land. That's a great goal. So as long as you're an adult and you have some interest in serving your community in these ways, this is a great space to learn what that means, what that looks like, and how to continue that legacy that our farmers before us and our growers and gardeners have led for us.
Now, could you just, maybe quickly tell us, what got you into this type of work? And you mentioned that you're going to be working with bees, so, it just keeps on expanding. What is it about this field that kind of inspires you to continue doing it?
I've been doing justice work for my whole life. So when I went to university, I started studying gender studies, and I realized the ways that systems were built to create divisions and to create a lot of struggle, and I wanted to figure out how to create systems that repaired that or that, were liberatory. And so I knew that liberation comes from the land, and so I said, let me start here. And then I realized I don't know, like you said, I haven't touched a tree in a while. Let me figure out where these people are that are able to teach me how to be in right relationship with the land, and it was farm school. So I think that I was led to this work because justice is intersectional, and I want to make sure that the foundations of my work start from the ground up, literally.
Well, Jazz, I want to thank you so much for joining us and kind of having this really cool conversation about things that are happening right here in our city. So thank you again.
Thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.
To learn more about the programs they offer, please go to their website at farmschoolnyc.org. We have to take a quick break, but we'll be back with more Open right after this.